Hey everybody, my name is Tonnisha English Amamu, and welcome to the Sister Circle podcast by Black Women in Biz. Black Women in Biz is a sisterhood of Black women business owners and entrepreneurs, and our goal is to provide each other with resources and support to help us become successful. And today I am with Jennifer Walton of Sky Nile Consulting.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. So tell us about your journey and what inspired you to start your business.
I love that question. I love that you said inspire.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that so I will say this, never in my life.
Okay.
Never in my life have I ever wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I say that because fast forward to now, I have two businesses. And it's weird. They say that once the entrepreneur bug bites you, it's like you can't control it. And I hate that for me.
Yeah.
I hate that for me. I hate that because I love stable paychecks. But I will say, I get stable paychecks from the business that I run. And so the journey is honestly quite dramatic in that I would say it started when I was in corporate.
Okay.
Since I was 9, I've wanted to be a businesswoman. I was a weird kid who loved to just be up under my parents, and my dad would take me out to his he was visiting with clients and things like that, take me to big office towers. And I wanted to wear fancy business suits and perfume. That was it. That was kind of my thing. I saw the movie Boomerang. I saw Strictly Business. And that was kind of my inspiration to be in business.
Yeah.
So, you go to college. And for many of us I was somewhat first generation in college.
Okay.
I had to navigate that whole process through myself. And so what ended up happening was I did the things, got the business degree, got my MBA, and now I'm in corporate. Loved it. I think I have the personality for corporate politics. I navigated those hallways quite well. And then I reached a point in 2020 where I think many of us were trying to explore what all of this meant in the context of everything was kind of falling apart, right?
Yeah.
And I will say, in terms of inspiration, my husband inspired me to challenge myself around impact because he does a lot of work in movements and in organizing and advocacy for people. And I watched him do it during the pandemic. And he was one of the first people in Columbus, certainly in our friend group, to get COVID. And he was out in the streets doing rallies and panels at a time.
I mean, after George Floyd's
Absolutely.
murder, the world was on fire.
Imagine, right? We were all sitting down at home, watching all of this stuff unfold before us, right? And for me, I was working at a very great corporation. I loved it there, but I was tasked with making rich people richer. And so every day, just even the nuance of things was starting to just eat away at my spirit in the sense that I don't know that I'm making much of an impact. I'm literally a fish in a very big pond. And, I'm getting promoted, I'm getting accolades, but I don't see impact. Certainly from a social justice lens, I was challenging leadership at the time and they were responsive to that. But what we probably all saw was the George Floyd moment, the Breonna Taylor moment, and then Ahmaud Arbery was thrown in there in terms of those were the only names that people were hearing and speaking about. Although here in Columbus, we have been saying many other names, right? I just realized it's not going to work out for me in the long term. And so I began to look for other companies where impact would be something that I could feel. And that's actually what landed me at CODA, our public transit agency, because I felt like this is the lifeline of our city, kind of the veins of the city. And it just wasn't a positive experience. And I was there for only a year. And so for someone like myself who had a lot of corporate success, that's consider the private sector, to pivot to the public sector and not have what I felt was success or not feel like I was being heard, or quite honestly, maybe I was being misunderstood, but I was coming in as an expert and I was being treated as if I were entry level. It really hurt. And it certainly damaged my ego and my confidence and just a lot of things that I'm still unpacking today. But I will say this, I'm saying this to myself, but I will say this to anyone. I started my business. I had 3 weeks to start my business because I had a very disrespectful encounter with a leader at that organization. And something that I hear people say a lot is, I'm being mistreated. I don't like things. I will tell you, you cannot stand for that.
Yeah.
And so I had a very unfortunate interaction on a Wednesday. My notice was submitted on a Thursday because at the end of the day, my values, who I am and what I stand for can't be compromised ever. So I had, from the time that notice was submitted until that last day to figure out how to start a business. And I figured I can do what I do for others. I will figure it out. Mind you, I have begun to try to interview. And I was interviewing with Fortune 50 companies, and that feeling of cubes and pressure and everyone's kind of scrambled and confused and unclear, I could feel it in my bones. That wasn't for me. And when I made the jump, my husband was fully supportive, and he was like, I've been telling you for years, it is you. Like you are my retirement plan. And even my therapist, when I ran it past her, was like, oh, like, there is nothing else. I gave her all these scenarios. I could go work for this company or this agency. And she said, well, why don't you start your own? And that upset my husband because he was like, I've been saying that.
Right.
I mean, yeah, but I pay her.
Just need to like get that confirmation and like.
Agreed. Yeah. I'm like, you're contractually obligated to do this for me. So,
right,
yeah.
Right. I love that. That's actually pretty similar to how I ended up quitting my job. Was bad experience or encounter with a manager.
Yeah.
The next day, put my 2 weeks in, and I'm like, okay, what are we gonna do? So,
yes, and you will figure it out. Even if it is to go get another job somewhere else. I think when you see people, I think was it Steve Harvey wrote something about jumping or leaping or nothing. I'm sorry, I'm not a big Steve Harvey follower, but I used to laugh at that idea of like, oh yeah, it's easy to say when you have millions in the bank. Well, I did not. And I certainly do have a 2-income household, and I have children who I support, and I want to make their wildest dreams come true. But I realized that I could do that by betting on myself.
Yeah.
I had no choice.
Yeah. And I love that. Like, speaking of your family, for me, like working with you and like when everything like started with us working together, I was so excited.
Yeah, me too.
Because like, I mean, seeing your name and things that you do, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, please. That's how I thought about you. I was like, oh my gosh, she's so good.
So like, I know you're busy. Obviously, we know your husband is super busy. You have 2 beautiful dogs. Well, now you have 3 kids.
Yes, let's talk about Sir. Absolutely.
You have your puppy now. How do you find the time to like really find that balance between like being the boss that you are, but then being the wife and being mommy?
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get vulnerable. Like, as if that's I don't know. I always over disclose in a sense, but I like to just be transparent. That's a personal value of mine. I will be clear that I'm not very good at that, and what ends up happening is I suffer for it. And I love what you said. I appreciate, and I own, and I take in your compliments because I haven't owned that.
Yeah.
And when I don't walk in my own power, I'm doing a disservice to myself and certainly other people. When I talk about wanting to impact others, I have to own what it is that people see in me that sometimes I struggle with, right? Yeah. And so like, I hear you like, oh, you're a boss, you're doing those things. And it's like, oh my gosh, not me. And it's like my natural inclination is to be like, no, but I am very active.
Yeah.
And I do a lot. And so why am I doing it if I'm going to turn around and be like, no, not me.
Yeah.
But I say that to say, I have been wearing myself out, honestly. And I've been trying to figure out how to achieve this harmony versus balance, because I knew that balance wasn't going to happen. And I'm working on this because it's going to save my life, but certainly it will save my children's lives, because I have 2 girls who are looking at me, and I know that they understand society and that, the man and the wife, and I know they understand that, even though that's not what we preach at home. But when they see my husband and I interacting with each other lovingly, that becomes a standard for them. They certainly do see us being busy and they see us working really hard. And so my husband and I have had to be really intentional about time that is theirs and then figuring everything else out. And so sometimes we do have to deprioritize ourselves, the individual, because again, I have to love my husband because it fills his cup. He has to love me because it fills my cup. And then our kids see that. They know that despite the busyness, despite the chaos, mommy and daddy still hug. They still dance together. They still laugh together. So we're very big on showing up for each other, especially for them, knowing that we all win in that regard. If you would have asked me a couple months ago, I would tell you I straight up don't do self-care. And I would say that because I know that there are people who don't, and I wanted to just make it clear that I didn't want to sugarcoat it. But I was worn out. And it took us going on a vacation, was that last month or in September of this year, and completely checking out, thanks to the wonderful people that I had on my team that I knew could carry the work forward. I learned that it is possible to delegate. I learned that it is possible to take a step back. And from that, it changed my life. It really did, because I realized things can wait. How many times have we been told to wait or to hurry up and wait? So things can wait. I tell people all the time, we're not doing brain surgery. We're not curing cancer. And so sometimes I have done it to myself by not telling my clients appropriate expectations. Like, no more. We can wait. Things can wait. And if I am late, and even if I'm wrong, we're going to be okay. So that was something that I had to learn how to tell myself. And then I had to restack my priorities. I would preach and talk about juggling balls. And some of my balls were crystals and some of them were rubber. So some would, break if I dropped them, and some would bounce if I dropped them. But I wasn't living it. I was preaching it and I wasn't living it. Now I get my sleep. Every now and then I might have to take a nap at 1 o'clock. I also might have to move meetings. So I was realizing that I was operating this business with too much rigidity. And that was me coming from corporate America. Not realizing that I am the boss now. And so the culture that I have is what I create. So that's been a lesson. I mean, I've only been in business for myself a little under 3 years. And so again, I had put all these pressures on myself to have it all figured out on day one. But now when I talk to people, and as a part of even my hiring process, I let people know what the vision is of this company that I'm building, what the culture is, that it is flexible, that it is compassionate. And hopefully people who honor and value that will be the folks that hire us.
I think what you said is important because, same for me, I struggled with, and still struggle with, when it comes to your work hours and, what you do, it's like, I have to work 9 to 5. I have to work 8 hours a day, and you don't.
And we all know that. We know it, but it's hard to unpack. It's hard to change the things that you've just been naturally socialized and ingrained to do. And I think as Black women, we have no idea what mediocrity looks like. Let's just be honest. We have been told for so long that we had to be twice as good to receive half as much. And I told my children that I won't. I told them that was a thing that I wouldn't put on them. And that is not to say that, be mediocre or don't be your best. But let's be clear, our best is so good. Folks aren't even prepared for that yet. They've never seen anything like that. So there's a level of, if you want my best, you got to pay for that. And otherwise, you're getting, 85%, which is still better than the majority of folks.
And you mentioned that being able to hire and delegate was impactful for you to be able to practice that self-care and take time
Absolutely.
off. I feel like those are like, outside of like starting the business initially, I think we all get to a point where I feel like I'm at that growth phase where it's like a fork in the road right now. Where it's like, I need more revenue so that I can hire more, so I can delegate more to really be able to build this thing. And so for you, when it came to like the hiring process and delegation, what were some things that you kind of like kept in mind as you were like vetting people to be able to come in and help you build your company?
Actually, it was a good friend of mine who started her own business who told me that she would find people in the unlikeliest of places, right? So she would go to a great restaurant and the server would be so good. She'd be like, are you interested, right? And so with that in mind, I should probably hire everybody at Chick-fil-A. And like, they're just so good, right? But, I will say this, a personal motto or ethos for me is everybody eats. And so it didn't dawn on me that I was creating jobs. Honestly, that corporate structure had me thinking that unless I was paying someone a salary of $150,000 a year, it wasn't worth me even trying, which is so goofy, right? But you just want so badly to overcome all of the systemic barriers to our success. And I definitely carry that on my shoulders. Like, I want to have it, this business, this agency that hires all these amazing people in my community, and everybody's going to make $300,000 a year, right? maybe we'll get there one day.
Right.
That's my vision, right? But I started with referrals within my network. And honestly, I am a firm believer, and I know a lot of people are not, but to me, again, it's just a matter of what kind of karma, whatever you want to call it. I'm a firm believer in I speak things to the universe and there it comes. And so there have been many instances where I've said it like out loud in a group of people, like, my goodness, I need a project manager. And literally was in a pool in the Dominican Republic, just talking about needing a project manager. And my friend's sister was like, that's what I do.
Wow.
And I pulled out my phone that was sitting there on the side of the pool, and I looked her up on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh my gosh, literally your LinkedIn says that you are a marketing project manager, right? So I was like, when we get back to the United States, I'd like to talk to you. And she's been with me for a year. And then I will say, like with you, I'm looking at all of this amazing work that you do. I'm looking at your own channel, and I'm like, she does exactly what I need. And, you know, this is the kind of work that I would love to see for my clients. And so for me, it wasn't about like interviewing or anything like that. It was, you do amazing work. And if you have capacity and if you'd like to do this work under my umbrella, I would love to have you. So I will say that I have always just erred on the side of my community, my village will provide. And I'll probably stand by that for as long as I possibly can. Every single person that I work with in my business is someone that's either been referred to me, or I have been able to see your work, love it. And I see it as an honor to work together. Now, I'm in this Goldman Sachs program where they bring in the HR people and all that stuff. And so there's been a level of like, well, you know, you got to do these performance reviews and you got to do all those things. And yes, I have the job description template plus Chat GPT, right? I've got all of those things that I can certainly use to move forward as I do scale and grow my business next year. But I think I won't stray from the values that I have, because again, I am not a corporate entity. I do not have to grow at a rate that, you know, shareholders have prescribed. I can do what works for me and the people that I trust in my community. The end goal, though, is to continue to create jobs so that everybody can eat.
So when you decided to go off on your own, what were some of those first steps that you took to like get out there? You know, I feel like there's always information about like start your LLC and go, but like there's more to it.
Oh my gosh.
How did you kind of actually like get it going, get clients and do it?
I'm gonna tell you right now that it is by the grace of God. I laugh because going through this Goldman Sachs program where it's like obviously I run a service-based business. And like I said, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. So my time spent online, I would see on Twitter, like start an LLC. I'm like, it has to be more than that, right? And so I will be on, and that's the thing is, you know, what prevents anyone from stepping out there is I don't know the steps. I don't know how I'm going to do some of these things. And those are valid questions and concerns to have. And I just was in a position where I was kind of forced to figure this out very rapidly. And so we had established the LLC because during a lot of the social justice, that moment that didn't last very long, what I was finding myself doing was advising C-suite executives how to navigate that. So originally my husband and I started the business to be consultants to C-suite executives around diversity, equity, inclusion. And I'm not an academic, right? I'm not someone who studied that, but I am a Black woman who has lived through a lot of it. My husband, being a lawyer, understood policy and how companies really needed to navigate these waters so that they wouldn't get sued by him. And I was talking to C-suite executives for free. Like, I could do this and get paid. So that's my husband actually registered the LLC. So thank God for that, because he actually went through that very paperwork intensive, I'm sure, process. But when I decided to start this business, what saved me was having the network that I built over the years. And so whenever I talk to literally students about building their personal and professional brands, like I did last night for Made for Medicine, I give them a framework to how to build a community and a village that will support you. And the way that I did that was, I need people who, if I get fired today, have had a great experience with me, have had a great relationship with me that's ongoing, that will hire me. So when I went to go start my business, someone that I worked with in the past and who knew that I wasn't having the best time at my previous employer, she knew that I was on the hunt. So she came to me and said, hey, I have a client that is looking for an interim VP of PR and communications. Would you be interested in speaking to them? And I was like, absolutely, but I'm also terrified. I don't do PR, okay?
Yeah.
I do marketing. A lot of people don't necessarily know the difference.
I was gonna say, I feel like that's another problem.
Oh
like,
my
in
gosh.
our world, it's like branding, social media marketing,
Right.
PR. Like, these are 3 different people's jobs.
Absolutely.
It's
like
not the same thing.
any internal comms, all of those things, right? And so, she made the introduction. And if there's one thing I'm going to do is talk to you. And so I sit down with this client and I'm like, I can do it, because really what it was lead the team in the interim.
Yeah.
And what I was able to understand, and I think this is kind of my secret sauce, is I understand corporate dynamics or organizational dynamics very well.
Yeah.
And, in this particular client's case, they were like, well, our former VP of PR and communications was really a policy person. We need someone with functional expertise in this area. And I knew enough to be dangerous, but I really knew how to lead a team.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I shared with that client. And thankfully they were like, okay, well, we'll hire you 4 months, right? So I'm like, phew, okay, I've got a client.
Right.
And, being someone who's done marketing and branding in the past, and honestly, I have a strong personal brand. I took a picture of me signing the contract, right? And I sent this picture along with what was going on to my village. These are people that over the years I had worked for in some cases, adjacent, and who I felt like I could disclose this massive change to. And I was very candid, like, hey, things didn't work out at my last job. And I was embarrassed, right? I had never in my life been unsuccessful or been at an employer for just a year and leave. But this was at a time where Great Resignation was a whole thing. So I was able to capitalize at least on that. And it was my truth. But I sent this email out to over 120 something people. I'm leaving my current job. Things didn't quite go as I planned, but I'm going to start my own business. And this is what we're going to focus on. Here's a picture of me signing my first contract. I just want you to support this endeavor when I post it on LinkedIn in a couple weeks, right? Cut my hair, had a little photo shoot, I did all these things. And what was wild was so many, and sometimes I still go back and read the responses. People responded like, I've got your back. So excited for you. This is going to be great. I cannot wait to see you thrive. And these were people who were executives at the company that the Fortune 100 company that I left, who had gone on their own ways. And I had the wind at my back, right? And so what that did though was create a situation by which folks were referring business to me. And so to this day, I still haven't marketed my business. Like I guess I have a couple little things here and there, sponsorships, but it's been word of mouth, and I'll say word of community. And then at certain points, your work starts to speak for yourself. And so then folks are like, well, I saw what you did there, or I saw what you did here. And your name begins to be spoken in rooms that you're not in. But those first steps, I got to say, like when I landed that first client, she said, send me your contract. And I was like, oh, I assumed that you would have the contract. So then, you find the tools. And I spent a lot of money my first year on, tools that went past their free trial expiration, things that I didn't quite use. I learned how to curtail that and curb that a little bit. But I'm like, oh, I got to get a contract. Oh, I have to have business insurance to work with the city or the state. I need to be certified as a minority business enterprise or a women business enterprise. And I will say this, when you Google, you will get a lot of information. Unfortunately, and this should be a reminder to all of us, a lot of those centers and minority business, they are not as organized. I think they've actually improved in the short period of time in which I've started my business, but they're not that easy to navigate. And so whereas I'm always holding myself to this perfection standard, I'm realizing that all of the entities around me are not perfect either, right? The information's inconsistent. And if anyone has ever tried to navigate the Ohio Business Gateway,
I can't. I just ride the coattails of all of my friends like you.
My gosh.
Who already are doing it, and you need a social person, put me on that RFP.
Hello. Because
it's so confusing. And even when you go try to search for stuff, like, because sometimes it'll say advertising. When you read it, it's actually social media marketing.
Or it's promotional items.
Yeah.
Or, But even in navigating some of these systems, you can tell that it's like they have an internal system that they know that they put on a website, and now they're forcing me to navigate it.
Yeah.
There's no one that's come in with a UX or UI certification or anything that says, hey, to the layperson, none of this makes sense.
Yeah.
And I would argue that some of that's probably by design. It's to weed out people who aren't going to go through the effort of figuring it out. But that's kind of where, to your point, I'm like, you know what, if I can clear this as a barrier for others, bring folks along, then we all eat. And you know, the more I learn, the more I share with people. You know, the Ohio Business Gateway is pretty confusing. So that's how I have to get my state MBEWE. But if I get the WeBank certification, I get reciprocity over here. So then I can kind of avoid this headache by going through this headache, right? But that's time. It takes time to get to those points. It takes a couple mistakes or errors. But thankfully, when it came down to certain things, like my husband has his own business. So when I needed to get business insurance, I didn't know what they were asking me. I sent the request to the insurance agent, like, whatever this is, get me the minimum of that.
Right.
And he was like, done.
Yeah.
Right. And but even bank accounts, right? Like I go to Chase, I get my bank account set up, and for some reason, they put my husband on one part and me on another. So then I'm still struggling with how to get those things reconciled. But now I've got the experience and some of the relationships to move to a community bank. So now I'm actually going to be interviewing a couple community banks to say, like, who wants my business?
Right.
Who wants to build a productive relationship with me so that I can go out? I did not use any debt to start my business. But now I understand how to use these tools to grow my business. And now I can come to the table with some negotiation power.
Right.
So
I love that. And, you know, even when it comes to having a village or community, I think with the age of digital, obviously we love it because it's part of our work. But I feel like the downside at times is for new business owners and entrepreneurs, we see the success stories on TikTok of people just like opening a TikTok shop, they go viral, and now like everything's great. But that doesn't happen for most people.
That's the key. I think people need to, I just want to underline that. That is marketing. And as a marketer, I fall for marketing all the time. I'll be honest with you. If that McRib commercial comes on today, I might go buy it. Okay. It's marketing. And it's psychological in a sense that it makes you feel less than if you're not there. And let this be a moment of truth for a lot of people. And I think you and I even talked about this once. When I first started my business, I was a little nervous, right? I had been doing marketing for big entities where a lot of this was decentralized, right? So at a big corporate company, you sit there and you make a PowerPoint and then you hand it off to somebody. And then everybody kind of does their little bitty part to come to the whole, right? So I was worried, like, do I know how to do this from the agency perspective? And I still deal with that, right? Because I never actually worked in an agency, but I was such a good partner with my agency partners that I liked being at the table with them, which gave me an opportunity to see how the sausage was made. But when I started my business, I started looking at digital marketing and I wanted to do these certifications. And I got a certification, I think, through HubSpot. And it's hilarious because the whole thing, I'm like, I know all of this. Yes, I do know this. So fine, I'm a digital marketer. But then what I started seeing, though, was all these experts in digital marketing online, and they were saying things and using words I had never heard before. Come to find out, I recognized that, one, they were all selling courses, right? And selling ebooks, and they were doing these pyramid schemes. So digital marketing became like this, I'm selling a product online, right? Faceless Instagram pages and all these things that might be a way to get money quickly. And if you follow these steps, I would never know because I'm not interested in buying someone's ebook to figure out this thing that is likely a trend, right? And then the other piece to it was learning how software as a service companies were using content marketing to fill their funnels. And so then I realized that I wasn't finding the kind of expertise that I actually had. And that's probably by design because these folks on the digital landscape were doing something completely different. And so I had to log off, honestly. And I had to just trust myself that I know what I'm doing. I know how to put it together. And certainly there are tools and ways that I can learn more online. But a lot of that stuff was just clouding my confidence. And it was a distraction to just doing my work. And I know, you know, the digital space is a confusing one now. And we talk a little bit about how social media is really a pay to play marketing channel.
Yeah.
And I approach it like that with my clients. You know, there's some elements of this where people will come to your social channels as a pull to check you out, but I cannot guarantee you that pushing things out is going to get you visibility.
Right.
Because it's up to Meta.
Yeah.
As to whether or not that works.
Yeah.
And they'll deny it all day. If your content is good, people will see it. That's a lot.
It's definitely a lot. And I think too, you know, I think of social media as like a digital billboard.
That's right.
Where it's like most of my clients or projects come through from relationships.
That's right.
But then you might go look at social media just to see like, well, what can this person do? Great. I like that. Let's do it. But only one time I had somebody come through LinkedIn.
Okay.
And they were actually reaching out to hire me. And I'm like, well, I just quit my job. So would you be interested in hiring me as a contractor?
Nice.
So that's how that happened. One time, like 5 years ago. But truly all of my clients have come through from relationships, never from seeing a social media post and then immediately like, just from this post, like, I want to hire you.
And one, I want to say kudos to you for taking what was an opportunity in one way and pivoting it into an opportunity that would work for you in a different way. I think that is actually really genius. And I think more people should think that way, right? Yeah. I do think that there's something about small business ownership. And this Goldman Sachs program, they were explaining to us that small businesses make the economy go round. And I didn't realize that until they laid the numbers out.
Yeah.
You know, you assume that most people work in corporate entities, and that is not the case. Most people work in businesses owned by, you know, one or two people, and even like a dental office, right?
Yeah.
That is a business that someone decided to start.
Yeah, I can't remember the number, but more than half of this taxes come from small business owners.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. So I love that you kind of held your ground on this is what I'm doing now, and here's how we can still work together.
Yeah.
And, you know, what is interesting is, you know, for me, I have certainly benefited from utilizing social media in strategic ways for myself. Now, and I don't see myself as a content creator or anything like that, because I post what I want to post, how I want to post. And I'm not doing anything strategically, to be honest with you, for myself.
Yeah.
And as we often say, the cobbler's son has no shoes, meaning that I can do for others what is much more difficult to do for myself, because I deprioritize that. If it doesn't drive a return on investment for me, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time there.
Yeah.
But what is interesting, though, is working on behalf of clients in this space and trying to convince them something that they believe that they know better than I, right? And it's just like, again, social media is the perfect example of this, and everybody wants to go viral and everyone wants to be seen. And I have to challenge sometimes clients, what would virality do for you?
Right.
And what if it's going viral and unintended, it's a negative thing? Are you prepared for that, right? So if the wrong crowd gets a hold of this message, and then what? But I have to tell people, a lot of my clients are public sector nonprofits, and they're localized here. Now, I do have other clients across the country that I'm very proud about, but I have to say that, you know, having 300,000 eyes on you outside of your service area will only hurt you in the long run. And again, because we don't have the control of the algorithm like we would want and hope.
Right.
And so if you get a whole bunch of views on one little piece of content, and now you got a whole lot of folks following you who aren't genuinely interested in engaging with you, you will actually be penalized for that down the line. Right. Because all of a sudden your engagement will drop. And the algorithm will say, oh, you're not interesting. People don't want to hear you. It's like, no, actually, I attracted the wrong crowd for a temporary moment. Dopamine spiked. I loved that. But now back to evergreen or back to everything else, and I don't have them anymore. The algorithm's not correcting for that. Yeah. And so I have to tell clients, like, you know, we have to play this balancing act. Social media is just a tool in the tool belt. Yeah. As a full service agency, I can talk to them about paid, owned, earned, shared, all of that. But I like to say that we lead with strategy versus tactics first. And that is why, because I've had clients that want to be on TikTok when they're who they serve and who their target is are elders. Yeah. It's like, I don't know that that's a good mix.
Yeah. And even the thought of going viral, like, what if you do? Does your business have capacity
to handle? You've seen a lot of that, right?
Yeah, and then people start complaining about bad service, but you didn't have the capacity to handle an influx of
gift and a curse
customers or clients like that. And then even when people go viral, sometimes it is like a one-off moment, but at times that person was probably doing the same thing over and over and over, and just one day it took off.
Absolutely. And so there are certainly opportunities where that moment, like you said, I think Tabitha Brown is a great example of had been in the game for quite some time. And then she shaved a carrot and made it bacon. Which I've never tried. And then all of a sudden it really did change her trajectory, right? And as a personal business or as a individual creator, that makes a lot of sense to have that consistency, put in that kind of work. But for a lot of the things that I do with my clients, it is not necessary for the entire country to see what it is that you do. Unless I can turn that into additional fundraising, into additional enrollment, into additional something, pressure even, right? To help your objectives be met. But that's the key of being able to sit down with clients and talk strategy and alignment, and then being able to map out what the right tactics are.
Right. Yeah. And with that, if you do have someone come to you and they're like, Jennifer, I want to get 1 million followers. Yeah. I want to go viral. I want to be like the #1 like TikTok account.
Certainly.
How do you navigate those conversations when you have to turn clients away?
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because that is exactly what would happen. Which is to say, I love that for you, right? That is not what I do.
Yeah.
And so certainly if you're looking to be an influencer, if you're looking to be a content creator where going viral is the standard, then I would suggest you seek, an agency to work with you. And because that's just not an area of expertise for me. And I will lead with my values on that, which is I'm just super big on authenticity. And my opinion is authenticity is not what sells on social.
Yeah.
It's highly curated moments. And I think even when we see the Tabitha Brown, those are exceptions than the rule, right? And I really appreciate Tabitha Brown for staying authentic. And honestly, she couldn't be me. I couldn't be her. Because there were times where I know she has wanted to just be like, you know what, y'all don't deserve me.
Right.
And that too is a valid feeling. But I think that, highly curated, overly strategized, watching the moving goalposts of social is typically how a lot of people win. And I think that you have to be prepared for that to be a full-time job for you, the creator, not just me, the agency, but you, the creator. You have to have a compelling reason for people to listen to you and engage with you. And you probably have experience where a lot of times people want you to do something and they don't have the input.
Yeah.
And so I have to be very honest with people, because again, that's a value for me, which is I don't do that. Here are some recommendations of people that may, but also even before you go to them, please come prepared with what your inputs are going to be so that you can get that desired outcome. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from jumping before they've got a plan.
Yeah. Self-care.
Yes.
What do you like to do for self-care?
Now, I said earlier that I've slacked in this area, right? And I've started to make some ground on this, but I will admit to you that first and foremost, a millennial, was addicted to scrolling.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that, I'm admitting that I, Jennifer Walton, was addicted to scrolling, particularly doom scrolling. So I was consuming a lot of content that really wasn't healthy for me. And I share that because I think, on the other side of our current election and the whole process, we got to be honest about this. We were just talking about social media. And while we do this for a living, I was starting to realize that a part of what was keeping me from self-care was honestly spending too much time on the internet. And so I was seeing content that was starting to convince me that my very life choices that are not harmful, and particularly in the ways in which I live my life, which are community focused, were bad.
Yeah.
Right. And I was showing up with my husband, and he was the one that was like, you are spending too much time on Twitter. He just called it out one day. And I deleted the app immediately, right then, cold turkey. And I noticed the weight starting to lift, right? Then I downloaded Threads, and for like a day, that was good, right? Because I just needed to, I realized that there was something there that was calling me that I don't know what, I still don't know what it was, whether it's just the ability to mindlessly share thoughts or engage with people that aren't, that I don't know. I don't know what it was. And so I wasn't taking care of myself. Now I will say, I go to the gym 3 days a week. I lift heavy. I go to the gym and I don't miss that appointment unless it's something for school, right? So I prioritize that. I joke and say that is not self-care because it is grueling, right? Nobody wants to like get up and sweat and deadlift 200 pounds. But I do know that that's, for me, something that I've never regretted a workout. And so I feel better when I've worked out. So I think that's just like a physiological response. You feel better. But then also I feel better mentally because I knew that, hey, when I woke up this morning, I didn't want to do this. I did it anyway. Pardon me. And if I can overcome this one thing, what else can I face today? Right. So there's a level of that's self-care and a little bit of torture. But I think now I have realized that consuming short form content written was something that I liked to do, but old school me liked to read. And so I thought to myself, why haven't I been reading? And I realized that as a mom, that, I would sit down and read and I would start on page 1 and then the kids would. And then I would get to page 2, forget what I read on page 1. And so there was this disruption. And so I think something that perhaps this generation of motherhood, we've overcompensated for is that we want to be so present. We want to always be there. And I think that is a good thing. And I don't know about you, but I grew up with I came home from school and then I have a very close family, but I would watch TRL. I would make me a snack and come dinner time, that's when I would probably talk to my parents. Right. And so there wasn't an expectation in our childhood that we were just constantly up under our parents and that they were constantly giving us their attention. So I grew up with children do children things, adults do adult things, and then we did things together. And again, my family was very close-knit. Every single Sunday, my entire family came together to eat dinner, watch Martin and Seinfeld. Okay. So very, very close. But we still had our space. And I think as a millennial parent, I didn't have that. I'm just always with my kid. And now they have this expectation that there's no way that they can't interrupt me. Mommy's in the bathroom. Mom, what are you doing? What's going on? Right?
I showered yesterday. I got the little one. We're fighting over the glass door. She keeps opening it. So the oldest comes in what's going on? I'm
y'all,
shower.
I'm just in the shower.
Wash right
and then, and so then that kind of, it's a constant thing. And so now I'm having to establish boundaries because that's good for them as well. And they need this idea of boundaries as they grow and mature. So I just think, wow, we overcompensate to a place where we actually don't want to be where we are. Right. And so by establishing that there are times where mommy has to have some time to herself and you all should have time to yourself, even as sisters. There are times where you don't want to play. That should be honored. Right. And so we've got to model that in our other relationships. And so with that, now I've gotten some new books. I'm excited to read. I've also gotten an Audible subscription. So there were a couple books that I was able to get on audiobook that I can listen when I'm driving to and from different engagements. And I realized that I was filling my brain just with mindless short form content when I really wasn't learning anything. And now I can go deep with the books and the authors that honestly, a lot of these folks get their inspiration from, right? I can actually read their words as they were intended. And that actually brought me back to my love of writing. And so I have a Substack now that I have pressure, I'm like, oh, I gotta write. And I have all these prompts and things like that. But I took the pressure off. I don't want to monetize that. I just want to write and share my words with folks. And hopefully the people who have subscribed are people that I can trust to enter into this relationship with, where I don't have to produce content on a kind of consistent calendar that may be at my detriment. I think we have over monetized hobbies. So that's the space that I'm trying to get back to from a self-care perspective, which is some boundaries with my kids. And the things that I used to love that I substituted with the digital sphere, reading, writing, getting back to that.
That's amazing. I'm a podcast girly.
Yeah.
So I've been considering like maybe I should do audiobooks because trying to like actually read a
Oh my
book,
gosh.
that exact same thing
Oh my
happens.
goodness.
Plus like the little one maybe trying to take it from me as
Oh,
well. So yeah, I've thought about getting into audiobooks. I love to listen to podcasts like while I'm working.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so I was diagnosed as an adult with ADHD, which probably a lot of us were. And I actually went through the process to get the diagnosis because I loved WebMD myself. And so I'm like, no, I can't do that. I've got to actually go get a diagnosis. And, I've struggled sometimes with audiobooks and even podcasts in the past because I noticed that my brain would start to, I'm listening and now I'm thinking about something else.
Yeah.
And then now I'm not listening. And so I'm honestly unpacking a lot of things.
Yeah.
Just realizing the ways in which I've masked throughout my life. And it's actually regulating because I will tell you, anxiety was something that I hadn't given a name to until I had my first child. And in doing so and learning what anxiety looks like and what it's about, I realized I've likely had it my entire life. I could go back and think like, oh, wow. And then honestly, lots of love to the women in my family. I've been telling them like, hello, this is where I get it from. You see that? That's anxiety. That openness with myself has been really healing. I love therapy. My last therapist had to let me go because she got a promotion. I was like, I love it for you, but not for me. Like, what does this mean for me? And one of the things that she said to me is, Jennifer, I don't think that you're actually mentally ill. She was like, certainly you have anxiety. A lot of us do. She's like, I think you're a Black woman in America. And I think you get overwhelmed sometimes. And she's Gen Z. So she just tells it to me straight, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is true. But I still have the tools now because I'm in a better regulated space that when those moments come where my anxiety could cause me to spiral into the worst of the what if scenarios that my mind is playing out, I'm able to pull it back in. And I'm so thankful for that because I do see it in my youngest child. And there was something recently that she was, the overpasses. She said, every time we drive under an overpass, I get very scared because I realize that trains come over it all the time. And what if one day it's worn down and it breaks while we're driving under it? She's 6. And I go, well, babe, that sounds a lot like anxiety.
Yeah.
And I promise you, verbatim, she said to me, that's exactly what it is.
Period.
Like, duh.
Like,
I'm thankful that she has the vocabulary to match her emotions and how she's feeling, but it kind of caught me off guard. So then also I'm like, okay, well, how do I help you? How do I fix it? I don't have to. Should I give you the tools? And also your ability to call it out means that I can say to you, great, let's reel it in. Not likely to happen, right?
You guys watch Inside Out 2 yet?
We did, and we saw that in the theater. And when I tell you, I cried so hard. My throat, you know how when you're crying really hard, it like hurts?
Yeah.
And so I was sitting next to my 6-year-old. So it was me, my 6-year-old, my husband, and my 8-year-old. And she looks over at me and she goes, are you okay? And I was like, hi. And she said, I hope it's happy tears. And I was like, yeah. And you know what was funny afterwards? As a family, we went out to eat, we discussed it. And I said, what character most resonated with you? My 8-year-old said, ennui. Like, okay. And I was like, boredom? And she was like, yeah, because that character was chic and fashionable and, basically like unconcerned. And she's like, that's me. She's very much mature and very fashionable. But then my 6-year-old, bless her heart, said embarrassment. And so what I realized is that she is shy. Okay. And so for someone who, when I have her, and she's a Leo moon and she's a reflection of me, I see the extroverted emotional side of her, but that's not what she always sees and how she presents to the world. And I was like, oh, but I asked them, who do you think I am? Yeah. And they said joy. Okay. And I was like, okay. Yes. One. And then they were like, and anxiety. Okay. And I said, oh, clocked that battle between. Clocked it. Yeah. And I was like, okay, got it. I have to take care of myself because the kids, they know. Yeah. They see it. And I'm sitting here trying to like be perfect so that they don't see it. And they're like, Mom, we see right through it. Yeah.
They do. My 8-year-old, sometimes the things that she says, I'm just like, who are you?
Absolutely.
Where do you come from?
She's you.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that it's the most fulfilling and it hurts the most, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, this is all within my realm of control,
Yeah.
but also not.
True.
So I love it. It's like
giving them the tools to prepare them for
and being honest about
outside. Yeah.
Like I want home to always be the safest place for you. And with that being said, outside of home is scary for reasons I don't even want to tell you.
Yeah.
But all I can do is prepare you for it. And so these little bitty things that scare you, that are big deals to you now, I'm going to give you the tools so that you can tackle them. And then when you get out in the world and those things that are scary are bigger, you have the tools.
Right.
As opposed to just being like, avoid this, avoid this, avoid this, because they're bad. I need to give you the tools.
Yeah. I love that. Being a mom.
Oh my gosh.
Never ending job.
And someone sent me this meme on social media recently that said, for high achieving, ambitious women, parenthood is the hardest job because we don't get that validation. We do not get the kudos and the high fives. And we are kind of, and I hate to admit it, but we are motivated by that, right? Climbing the corporate ladder, you're motivated by each rung, right? And I get that, especially having been successful. And when I would look at some of my peers, oh, you're a CMO, that was my goal. But then I saw at what cost, right? But certainly still, we are ambition on the other side of that is the validation that you did it right, that you got it right. And so in parenthood, you don't quite see that come to fruition, maybe never. And you could 20 years from now, my daughter could be whatever. My youngest could be whatever. They could be whatever they want to be. I have to be okay with that, right? And I've never prescribed, you should be a doctor, you should be a lawyer, you should be a businesswoman like mommy, none of that. Your wildest dreams, I want to make those come true. But that may, I don't know what that's going to look like. And certainly I've disappointed my parents at times, I'm sure. My mom and dad would never admit that, but and they may disappoint me at some point in a sense of like, oh, I wish you would have done this thing, right? But never at a larger level. It's just not possible. But that idea of getting a pat on the back, not likely to happen in the ways in which we are wired to receive it. And so what I'm saying then is I have turned the trials of parenthood and specifically motherhood into ways in which I am so grateful for the opportunity to go through it, because the way that they pour joy back into my life, I mean, it's hard though.
Yes. It's the hardest job. And like you said, to that point, we won't even know if we got it right until they're like 30.
Right. And that is why I give my mother flowers all day, every day.
Yeah.
Between 14 and 17, that was not. We had a very trying time. And I was a straight A student. So I had all the things, but I had entitlement. I had this thought that like, I'm doing all the things. I'm grown and mature. I know what I'm doing. And with time you learn, right? And I have apologized to my mom, and she is my best friend. She's the best grandmother. And there is a generational healing in that. And I try my best to then pass that on to my children, which is that we can have a relationship by which I am both your mother and your friend. And I tell them, when you need a mom, call me. When you need a friend, call me and say, I need the friend, not the mom. Just so that I can meet you where you are. Mom will figure it out later. But in this moment, I need you to feel safe enough to tell me what you need to tell me. Because I tell my kids all the time, I am tasked with keeping you alive. That's it. I gotta keep you alive.
Well, as you think about your future as a mom, as a wife, business owner, where do you see, yourself being in the next 5, 10, let's say 10 years, 20 years from now?
I think there's power in documenting what your vision is. In pencil, maybe. But you got to do it, right? So my husband and I recently reviewed our 10-year plan that he wrote. Gosh, 14 years ago. And it blew my mind because so much of it was manifested. So much of it came true. And at the time that he sent it, I thought he was just running games. We were just dating. I was like, okay. But upon reflection, I realized how much had come true. So we have been in the practice now of preparing our next 10 years. Goldman Sachs asked us what our exit strategy was. I hadn't planned that. I didn't document that. And they gave us a list. You're going to sell it. You're going to pass it down to your kids. You're going to just shut the doors, right? And I didn't think I had something that could be sold. And I think I actually am building something that could be sold. But my first priority, though, would be to pass it to my children. And so when I think forward 10 years, I think that I know, as a matter of fact, that I will have built a business that I'm very proud of, that my children absolutely can step into if they want to. And if not, it will be theirs to sell. Because in 10 years, I will have a college freshman and I will have a high school junior. And that blows my mind, but they will be thriving. I see their greatness in them. And even if their greatness is kindness, I see it in them. And so at that point, though, I want myself to be positioned where this business that I have built is running successfully, and I am still able to pour into my children and prepare them for that next phase of their lives. Because 20 years from now, I just want to be able to be a space for their needs in a unique way. I think I hate to come back to the motherhood piece, but when they're born, you're so scared. Like, whew, I got all the things. Like, you were so vulnerable that we assume it will get easier as they get older. I am wise enough to listen to the people who are at these phases now, and I understand that it actually gets harder. Right? So I'm trying to build something from a business perspective that is successful, that feeds a lot of people, including my spirit and my children and the families of others. So I know that's just capitalism at work will happen, right? But I'm in a place of contentment. And I one of the things I've been writing for my Substack is that, everyone tells you fake it until you make it, but no one's going to tell you when you've made it. And so we have a tendency not to honor that, not to stand in that and be grateful for it. I'm doing that now. I am grateful I have made it. So how do I build it for others? And that is what I see in 10 years. I will have built it for others. And at that point, I'm just in legacy mode. 10, 15 years from now, we have cemented the legacy and I'm nurturing it. One of my biggest inspirations here locally is Donna James. And she is still someone that I can turn to and ask for guidance. And when she tells her story retroactively, I'm blown away. Like, you are a normal person, right? But then when I also see her today and, she's doing all this amazing work, what I really see, though, is the way she continues to pour into community. That's me. And she is my blueprint, and I'm thankful to have it because I can believe it now that I can see it. And I just want to continue to be something and someone that people can believe in because they can see it. That's it.
I love that. And you are super involved in the community as well. You're doing all the things.
And sometimes it's like it's not enough, right? But then it's just challenging these notions. And one of these days, I'm going to finish Rest is Resistance. This idea that I don't have to. And that's the other part, is just figuring out how to pour into and nurture others, not at the detriment of myself. Which, and to a certain extent, means, again, standing up the people and the structures that can continue to do the work in the community. That's it.
That's amazing.
I hope not. I believe it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
We're manifesting it now.
That's exactly right. Yes.
So how can people connect with you if they just want to follow you? And,
absolutely.
Or even work with you?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, you can follow me personally on Instagram at JG Runs the City. There's a very funny story I'll tell you about my screen name offline. I can never change it, though, because that's a part of my brand. So that at JG Runs the City. And certainly I always tell people, look me up on LinkedIn, Jennifer Walton, MBA. If she looks like me, it's me. There was a Jennifer Walton, who's a doctor. And I thank her for keeping our brand tight. But my business is Sky Nile Consulting. And so you can follow us on all social media, Sky Nile Consulting. And Grind is a business that we own that is a community hub. And so Ground X Grind on Instagram is how you can find us there. And I invite people to be in community. I think that honestly, the future flex is what you've built offline. When you can't trust what you see online, you got to trust the people that you see next door. And so I obviously, if you want to work with me, certainly reach out through those channels. And I would love to have a conversation. I have wonderful people like you that I engage to do a lot of the great work that we do. And so we're going to continue to tell these amazing stories in our market, in our community. And the sky's the limit, honestly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely. Like, this is such an honor. Thank you.
All right, guys, make sure you follow and subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode. See you guys later.